All right. This is my first attempt at reading my tweets, which I have thought about doing for a while because there are a lot of people that focus on YouTube and they don't go on Twitter, which I think is a big mistake because you can focus on specific people that you like on Twitter and not see some of the nonsense that you've heard about. Yeah, there's some stuff on Twitter, a lot of garbage, a lot of trolling activity. But if you follow, like, just as an example, if you wanted to follow my work, you just go on Twitter, create an account, and you can follow me, just me. And you won't see any of the other crap, except if people reply to me, you'll see that. But you can control your own experience. But first off, excuse me. Um, I really need to do this. I know people, I hate doing this, but I have to do it because if I'm going to do this as much as I do right now, I do this all day long as much as I can when I'm not working. And I try not to take work because I'd rather be doing this, but my regular work pays really well as a camera operator, but it's not about money for me. If I can pay the bills doing this, I'd rather do this. Um, but I right now that's not happening. So if you like what I do and you support it, first of all, that's my blog. That's my Twitter. The blog is first. And then supporting, if you want to send money one time, you can use PayPal, which is UfoJoe11 at AOL.com. I also have to make these into audio. I know people are like, make it into audio for a podcast. I need to figure out how to do that. I know it's not that hard. It's just time consuming to do everything between the blog, Twitter, which is really where I do a lot of work, and then YouTube. And then Venmo is another one which I prefer because they don't take a percentage like PayPal. But the support, most of the support that I have comes from Patreon. I don't make enough money to support myself, not even close. So that's why I have to still work. Um, a lot of people do not want to pay for UFO or paranormal material. That's just how it is. So if you guys like this and want me to keep doing it as much as I am, you can use that to support me and my efforts. And so this is my first attempt at reading my tweets, reading angry tweets. Yeah, if I see angry tweets, I'll read them, but that's not what I'm really trying to do. I'm just going to go over the last couple of days. And I will start out with that's my Twitter. Amazingly, I am up to almost 13,000 followers. I think when I did my newsletter back in 2000, I had a maximum of 800, and it was a free newsletter, which I intended to charge eventually, but then I stopped doing it, went back into television, and the rest is history. I didn't push it. I didn't pursue it until 19 years later, 18 years later. All right. So that's my Twitter. And I will go back down to an article that was written by Christopher Sharp, and I'll read what Christopher wrote. It's related to the Gillibrand amendment and then versus the Pentagon amendment. So there was, and Christopher Sharp's article was retweeted by Christopher Mellon and Luis Elizondo, if I could find it. Here we go. So we'll start here. And I'll just read a couple of lines. And you guys are going to have to search yourself. It's for the link. So there's the link, but I don't have time to go through all the links and put them down. And if anybody has questions for the 3 people that are watching, I will get to them. But I'm also right now I'm focusing on what I'm reading. So this is how his article starts out. You can't see it because I'd have to pull up another thread. I'll just read it. The headline is "Surrounded from All Sides. The Pentagon will lose its UFO battle." And that starts this week in Congress. And the article says, it's actually a picture of Senator Marco Rubio. I'm not sure who the other person is. And it says the Pentagon is on its last legs when it comes to the unidentified aerial phenomena issue. Not only has it undermined Congress, but it's also now putting up a desperate resistance whilst surrounded by all sides. The truth will come out, but the Pentagon's actions are only making its problems worse. And it starts out last week, the DoD decided to establish a new office group slash group to replace the United States Navy's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, the UAPTF. The office is named the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, AOIMSG. Not exactly something which flows off the tongue. Hint, that's the point. I don't know if that's the point. I don't know if that's why they came up with their name. I have no evidence that they came up with a ridiculous acronym on purpose to make us not have something catchy. Who knows? Chris continues, the DOD's Christopher Sharp, the DOD's move came with the backing of two senior administration members, Avril Haines, who's the Director of National Intelligence, and Kathleen Hicks, Deputy Secretary of Defense. It's not a good look. The DOD may cry out that it was simply responding to the June UAP Task Force preliminary assessment and Hicks' subsequent memorandum, but it did so with the full knowledge that the Senate's Gillibrand-Rubio amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2022 was a far superior version of AOIMSG. So that's all I'm going to read there. Really in-depth article by Christopher Sharp, which if you can find it without, you could see the link, Liberation Times. I think it's liberationtimes.com. You could see that. You'll find that article. Nice job by Christopher. All right, so let's go through some of my tweets. And so this was tweeted by Dr. Disclosure, saying, I am picking up vibrations that something big is going to happen by year's end. Potential black swan event. And I responded, I'm picking up vibrations that this is bullshit. Because anytime anybody makes a prediction like that, 99.999% of the time, it doesn't happen. It's nonsense. And this person, whoever this person is, also tweeted something like that, I think in August. Oh, there's going to be something by the end of August. I know for sure it's going to happen. So I would ignore this person. They've said other things, like Jeff Bezos was going to join the effort for searching for UAP just because he was part of the National Cathedral event. But if you looked at the program, you're like, that's not going to happen. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to say it. Let's watch Jeff Bezos from Amazon. He didn't say it. So got to be careful. You got a lot of people just trying to get attention. Let's see. As I said in my video I made, I had a contact who told me that, yes, the whole office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, which would be in charge of this AOIMSG, not a good thing. But the person I spoke to didn't think it was something nefarious, they just thought it was ill-advised and premature because we have the Gillibrand Amendment. So, but that person also said the folks who want to keep us from studying UFOs, basically the evangelical religious folks, they're behind a lot of this. So, and I had two sources on that. Other people have heard that, the Collins elite type folks who don't want us to study this because they believe it's demonic. And I guess they believe it's opening up a door or, allowing whatever it is to come in further. I don't know. So let's see. Let me go through these tweets and it'll be a little clunky. So J. Christopher King, I interviewed him. He's an experiencer. His story is really good. I think he's the first experiencer I interviewed since the late 90s when I interviewed Melinda Leslie, who deals with MyLabs. So I interviewed him a few months ago, and he said, and he has other witnesses and other people who have experienced things in his life, his mother, his girlfriend, his friends. That's why I really like his story. That's why I wanted to interview him. He comes across as extremely credible. And he said it's a good point to remember that many beings really seem to want to cover their tracks. And he's had abduction-like experiences. And from observation, they appear to often use wildly advanced technology to do so. We often hear about memories being wiped, even screen memories, lies from some, to debase, confuse an experiencer. Fits. So me personally, I'm not 100% convinced we're dealing with beings. It definitely appears to be the case, but the other side as well, it's something coming from our collective unconscious. All of us as humans, we're creating this somehow. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe in some instances, maybe with some poltergeist activity, it's coming from the person, our consciousness, but from, our our minds creating these beings. I don't know. It's just not just one possibility. It's not high on my list. But, we don't have the evidence that we're really dealing with beings except for the experiencers telling us, and a lot of the stories are similar. So I do take it seriously, but you have to take every case one by one. Jay is I think he's a great witness. You could find that interview. It's on my YouTube. And yeah, I do think it's possible if we are dealing with beings, whether or not they're interdimensional or extraterrestrial, they have technology and they could make us feel certain emotions, certain ways. That's why they can create that emotion of love. I was speaking about it the other day. They can create an emotion of fear, in theory. I'm really careful about saying what I believe when it comes to that stuff because I don't know. All right. So somebody says Lou fits a decades old pattern of employees of the government trying to blow the whistle on UFO secrecy because some UFOs are real craft. And then he says Anjali fits a decades old pattern of contactees predicting promising open contact with aliens, which always fails to happen. Okay. So this was in response to I had tweeted out, it was a Christian minister, I think, and she said she encountered this reptilian who had a false face that she ripped off, and it was really somebody pretending to be her husband. It was a reptilian, and he wanted to have sex with her, and people right away are making fun of this woman. I'm like, well, some of the details that she's talking about have been brought up by other experiences, so I don't immediately reject it. Um, and I may be mistaking what I'm talking about here, but I tweeted, if you listen to any of Carla Turner's lectures, she talks similar. Some of the details from the people that she worked with, experiencers, they match, beings wanting to have sex, and it's not just Carla Turner. So, and I've spoken about before. I have a close family relative who had some sort of something come into the room, and it was of a sexual nature. So I don't just close off my mind because it sounds it sounds ridiculous. Oh, and a reptilian came in and pretended to be her husband. Okay, I know maybe the story's bogus. I don't know, but I don't immediately reject it. But Carla Turner also talks about people who apparently had real contact, and these beings will give them predictions, and the predictions never come true. It's almost like either it's a misinterpretation on the part of the experiencer, um, or it is, I lost my train of thought, or they're giving out bogus predictions to to hurt the credibility of the experiencer. I don't know, but we're talking about. And Carla Turner says these beings are liars. If you get a chance to watch her lectures, Carla Turner with a K on YouTube, she's dead now. She had a really advanced form of cancer. Some people believe she was targeted. I have not seen any evidence of that. Um, and Anjali, which I really don't want to talk about. I think there's still a blog on my website about her claims of meeting extraterrestrials in a mountain in California. Her background is what was interesting. She worked, I think it was DIA, intelligence analyst, allegedly. Some people say that's bogus. Some people say it's true. Yeah, Pix. I'm doing a Twitter summary for the first time. I do sleep sometimes, but not very long, and it's been a problem for the past couple of months. Um, because I don't fall asleep till late, and that's usually not a problem with me until recently, the last year, I'd say, ever since the New York Times article. Um, so this is an alternative cover for Skinwalkers at the Pentagon that was made by Uplifting Tweets. That's the account who did that. Because people complained about the cover. That's the first thing. Oh my God, the cover is horrible. It's got a typo, which I don't think it really did. It was, but anyway, people complained about the cover instead of reading the book and talking about what was inside of it, which was kind of annoying. It's the last thing. As soon as I got the book, I had a copy of it, PDF. I didn't care about the cover. I wanted to read it. And then somebody said they wanted to come onto Twitter from YouTube, and they said, "Any advice?" I basically said, "There's going to be days on UFO Twitter that's like the Wild West. I mean, there are days like it's really out of hand, and people are just so negative and attacking." And I'm not saying I attack too sometimes. If I see nonsense, I'll call it out. Um, so, but there are days when it's great. You know, you don't, on the bad days, you're going to want to block everybody or mute people. Muting is a great thing that you can do. You mute them and they don't even know you've muted them. So if you block them, they know that there's a big message saying you have been blocked. And so people don't like that. I try not to block. And when I do, I usually unblock like a week later and start over from scratch. So there's Christopher Mellon retweeting Christopher Sharp's article. I can play audio and pics. You can tell me if you hear audio. Let me know if you hear this audio.
After I had a encounter with a ball of light,
Can you hear that,
I
Pix?
started having seizures within a couple of days. My dog, who was sitting next to me at the time, started having seizures, and I had to eventually put him down after a couple of weeks because they got worse and worse and worse.
Let me
and
know
I was
if you
going
can
in
hear
and out of
that.
hospital with these seizures, and they couldn't stop them, and they didn't know what was causing them or what had caused them. And then they found that I had bone issues, a thing called hypophosphatemic osteomalacia,
Okay,
which is like
let
a
me start
rare
it
bone
again.
disease.
So he's just talking about his encounters. These are negative encounters. I think it was with an orb. I'll start it again though.
After I had a encounter with a ball of light, I started having seizures within a couple of days. My dog, who was sitting next to me at the time, started having seizures, and I had to eventually put him down after a couple of weeks because they got worse and worse and worse.
Wow.
And I was going in and out of hospital with these seizures, and they couldn't stop them, and they didn't know what was causing them or what had caused them. And then they found that I had bone issues, a thing called hypophosphatemic osteomalacia, which is like a rare bone disease, hyper rare, and it's caused by one of the causes is gene mutations or exposure to radiation. Now, that's a scary thing because they found that my bones were that weak, they were on par with a 90-year-old woman's bones. This is after this incident where I had this light. And another part of this incident, I was wearing a jacket at the time because it was a winter night, and I felt this, like I put my arm up in front of my face because there was this intense flash of light from this object, and I don't know if it was what it was, but it kind of lit up my entire vision. I felt this warmth, and then the next I went to bed and I was like, okay, that was weird. It blinked out, it was gone. My dog and then my dog started barking after it blinked out, which was really strange as well. And then I've crashed out in the garage, because I was at the office. It was in the garage, and I had a little sofa thing in case I worked too late, so I could just crash in there and not wake everyone up in the house. And here I am crashing out, wake up in the morning, and I go and bring Mel in a coffee, and I'm like, oh, here you go. And she's like, oh, look at yourself in the mirror. I'm like, what? She goes, oh, you look like crap. And I'm like, thanks, that's good. And I'll go and look in the mirror, and sure enough, my eyes are virtually nearly stuck together. My face is swollen, had red splotches all over it. My neck had red splotches all over it. And then over a period of about a week, my arms started getting red underneath the jacket, like that I was wearing that night. My arms started getting red and red and redder, and then it started blistering. These really strange green blisters. We went to multiple doctors, specialists, Mel and I, professors even, eventually trying to work out what was wrong with me.
So that's one, and I don't know his story. I don't even know his name. The show is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. She has some really good guests on. It's funny, there are people who I find really interesting, like Barry Taff. There's another person she had recently, Ray Boucher, if I'm saying his name right. She has them on. She's had them on for a long time. We disagree vehemently. We disagree. It's a 180 on some of the stuff. She thinks Skinwalker Ranch is black technology. I do not. I'm not saying there isn't some aspect that may be black technology, but so yeah, Erica's been doing it for a long time. She is good picks, but like I said, we disagree big time on some of that stuff, which I'm not going to get into now. But so basically, I said what that guy said. It sounds like some of the cases in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon where people were injured, and yes, people also have been healed. But I would think the first priority, if this is non-human technology, if that's what we're dealing with, and people are getting injured, we should find out why, and if it's random, if it's intentional, we need to find that out. And we can also pay attention to the positive cases. But I mean, people are getting injured, and 25% of Dr. Kit Green's patients who have close encounters with the UAP, 25% of them die within 5 to 7 years. So that's pretty serious. Damien Knott. Okay, PJ Mike says. Ray has a brother, Trey Boucher. I studied French in 7th grade. I know what Trey is. I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, and I did something on the Gillibrand Amendment on YouTube, and Jazz Shaw, who writes for, I forget what he writes for. He doesn't have the link on there. He was just saying it was good work by me. Well, here's the story, which is hard to believe, and I'm still not sure, but I know the guy who investigated Stephen Broad. I think Broad is very, very meticulous parapsych. I don't know if he's a parapsychologist, but he looks into life after death and mediums and all that stuff, and he actually thinks it's coming from our consciousness. He doesn't think poltergeist and mediums and physical mediums who allegedly can bring the dead person into the room. It's called physical mediumship, materialization mediums. He thinks it's all coming from the consciousness of the medium or the people involved in the room in the seance. But he says, he talks about the gold leaf lady, and he's written about her, and she basically can, and I wish I had the video, she can exude this, allegedly, this gold leaf comes out of her pores. It's really, really weird. And he thinks it's because of the dynamic with her husband. It's a way of her getting back at her husband. And I can't describe it properly enough here. I'm trying to think. Oh, and that guy, Stephen Broad, he also wrote an article about astrology, which I've never been into astrology. I'm not totally closed off on it, but I've never seen, the horoscopes in the newspaper. That's basically what I've seen. And then I have friends who do charts, but I'm like, all right, I'll go ahead, do a chart. Here's my birth date. But nothing serious. But he had Stephen Broad, I hope I'm saying his name right. Stephen Broad, his wife did astrology, and she was making predictions of sporting events. So that article is really good, which I linked to, and I haven't read it in a long time. I need to read it again. It just came to mind when somebody was talking about astrology. So it's like the one thing on astrology I've seen, actually two. There was a TV show where Michael Shermer, who's a skeptic debunker, who they had an astrologer doing these charts, and Shermer was impressed. I was like, I need to find that one. It's like, it's really hard to impress Michael Shermer, Mr. Debunker. He's actually he's kind of one of the nicer debunkers, but still a debunker. So that's an article on astrology and making predictions. She did the charts of the players, and she would say this person's going to have a really good day today, and she was supposedly really accurate. I'm not sure if he bet on the games or not, and I don't know if he followed up. He said he was going to follow up and do more detailed work on it. I don't know if he ever did. He shouldn't be too hard to contact. I should find out. So I called up my senators the other day to say that I support their support of the Gillibrand Rubio amendment. Called up and I said, can you connect me with my senator, Catherine Cortez Mastro? And they said, sure, hold on. And the message is, you have reached the office of Alexandria Cortez, Ocasio-Cortez. I think I'm saying that right. And they obviously put me through the wrong one. But I did call both of my senators and my representative in Congress, Congresswoman Susie Lee. So I called all three, got to talk with somebody the first time. They knew what I was talking about. I said the amendment, and they're like, yeah, the National Defense Authorization Act. Yes, I know what you're talking about. It's noted that you want her to support it. The other ones, I left messages. Go online and say, type in who are my senators. There's two of them. And then your representative in Congress and say, I urge you, my representative, to support the Gillibrand Rubio Amendment for the National Defense Authorization Act. So now, this was interesting, and this is audio. Oh, nope. I do have the audio queued up. We'll get to it in a second. The Pentagon spokesperson was asked about the OAIMSG. I'm going to look at some notes, comments. Hard skeptics have the worst built-in confirmation bias. Yeah. It's funny because Michael Shermer had a synchronization after somebody in his family died, and something came on the radio that was connected to that person. He saw it as a sign of and I listened to his story, and his story really wasn't that good as far as, maybe that's a message from the dead person, but it impressed him. He wrote about it too. I'm sure if you Google it, Michael Shermer, synchronicity, you might be able to find it. All right, so I transcribed what the Pentagon spokesperson said, but I want you to hear it. Hear it. Let's go back to last year. This is what he said. Same Pentagon spokesperson, but this is probably my favorite question and answer.
Hey, John.
So the person asking the question is Jeff. Let's see if I pronounce his name right. Jeff Shogol, I think. And this was during, I'm not sure where he got this from, but it was about crash retrievals and bodies. You know, we had the New York Times article. I'm not sure when this was. Let's see. What time was it? So June 9th. So this is before the New York Times article. This was retweeted this year, but the question came sometime last year, and I'll let you hear it. It's great because you could tell he really didn't want to ask this question, but he did.
Hey, John, happy birthday. There's no way that I can sugarcoat this. I was talking to a gentleman about the UAP report, and he contends the Pentagon has alien bodies and crafts. So I just wanted to run this past you. Does DoD have these things, and if so, where?
Jeff, the UAP task force is really designed to take a look at these unexplained aerial phenomena, try to help us get a better understanding of them. Again, I'm not going to get ahead of the report that the DNI will submit, that we are helping, obviously, and providing input to. And I think I'll just leave it at that, Jeff.
Yeah, that was great. I don't really know how to say this, but can we talk about bodies, alien bodies and craft that the government might have? I mean, and I've communicated with Jeff just that he would send me a DM, just, hey, I just put an article out, check it out. That's it. But Nicole has given me her favorite person award because now she doesn't have to check Twitter anymore. And I can't get to my stupid screen to pull up her message. So sorry, I can't get back to that screen. But you're welcome. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And there's Lou retweeting Christopher Sharp's article or tweeting it. Giuliano, if you guys don't know him, Omni Talk, Giuliano Marankovic, he collects everything, video, articles, starting in 2017, but he goes way back before that. And if there's a book online that's out of print or it's $1,000 because somebody's jacking up the price, I'll say, Giuliano, please tell me you have a PDF of that. And usually he does. So he's amazing. He's one of the people why I even did anything on Wilson Davis, because he found the original post on Imgur. I think I'm saying that right. And he retweeted out some of Kirby's comments in the past. And the question, which I'll get to, the more recent question. Hopefully I went far back enough. That's my effort at that was my effort at making a graphic for Knapp and Kelleher, my interview. It's a little weak on the right side. It doesn't really match, but it doesn't really look like a scary wolf either. But that's what I got. And yeah, one of the things that was said in that interview, if you watch it, is some of the related phenomena like poltergeist, that kind of stuff, that happened at people who were connected to Maelstrom around the Air Force Base, which I had never heard before. Also, Project Hessdalen in Norway, the engineers would experience that too, but they didn't want to talk about it because they're engineers and they don't want to have their credibility ruined like everybody else. Yeah, hopefully I did not reach the top yet. I just want you guys to hear the audio from the Pentagon spokesperson, the more recent one. And here's Brandon Fugel, Skinwalker Ranch, earlier today. Still investigating, still, using their instruments. He put a lot of money into that, and that was one of the criticisms of Bigelow. He didn't put as much money in that people thought he should have. Brandon is changing that, and people are still giving him a lot of grief as of an hour ago, saying, you don't release any of your data. You're not open. There's no evidence of anything. It's like most of the evidence at Skinwalker is anecdotal, but it's a lot of people. It comes to a point where you have, so Do you trust the reporting of George Knapp? Do you trust Colin Kelleher and Lukatsky, who put their names on a book to say that, all 5 DIA people had, hitchhiker type effects, 10 security guards. There are other people in other cases going back years, same type of thing. But Skinwalker Ranch specifically had Eric Davis having experiences, Colin Kelleher, George Knapp. It's like at some point you have to, unless you think everybody is clueless and everybody is lying, you have to say, okay, something odd is going on there. I'm way past that point, but there are some people like, nope, it's just a story. Don't want to hear it. Give me the evidence. And the stuff is not easy to document. Whatever it is, doesn't want to be documented. Yeah. So people were like, what kind of evidence are you talking about, Brandon? He's like, and that was his response, evidence drawing from experiments with, I think people want the video to be online. Everything he does online, just put out. That's what they want. Which I don't think is realistic, but he's like evidence drawing from experiments with third-party experts, 40 surveillance cameras, FLIR systems, LiDAR, infrasonic sensors, advanced photo. Can't say it because it's late and I can't pronounce words right now. Anyway, that's what they're doing. I'm going to look at your comments in a second. I know someone who makes awesome graphics and thumbnails. So do I. I don't really like bothering them, though. That one was quick. It's a microcosm of ET proof generally. It's there in the mountains, even if it's anecdotal. I mean, that's how UFO started. It was all anecdotal, obviously. And then people were able to capture some stuff on camera, which a lot of people, like even the Trent photographs, people think that's bogus. I don't know the year those photos were taken, but they were analyzed thoroughly. Most people think they're legit, whatever they are. Let's see. Oh, I got into it with Melinda today. Not really. I didn't really get into it. But we were talking about Skinwalker Ranch and hitchhikers and people attaching stuff to them. And she said, seasoned paranormal investigators know you have to set intention, do protection, release when completed, and do clearings. It's sounding to me like these folks, and I was talking about the DIA folks. So they did not do any of this. I've done hundreds of intense investigations and never taken it home. Neither had team members. And my response was basically, first of all, I don't think she's read the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon because it's not just Skinwalker Ranch. And second of all, where was I going with this? As far as doing clearings and, darn it, what was I going to say about? Oh, yeah, I said, I don't think she's visited, just as an example, Skinwalker Ranch may be one of several places where this phenomenon is, has access to us. If it's entities, if that's what we're dealing with, or an intelligence, maybe Skinwalker Ranch and other places like Crestone and Sedona and Yakima and Dulce, maybe those places, the veil is thin and this stuff can get through easily. And it's like, and no matter what kind of prayer of protection you do, it's not going to matter. Then again, maybe it does matter. My point was, we need to do an experiment. We need to get 1,000 researchers they could be the control group. They don't get the prayer of protection. And then you have, or they could be the experimental group, and the control group can get the prayer of protection. And you could see, does this group take home, hitchhiker phenomena? Do they have poltergeist activity? Compare the two. That's the only way to know. Melinda and then Grant jumped in saying the same thing. Other people, that's too small of a sample size to really say anything about it. But I'd be willing to try. I'd love that experiment. But who the hell has funding? We don't have that many experimenters to try that. Good night, Mentira. Good night, Gabby. I think I don't know about season 3 of Skinwalker. I saw something about it there today. When I interviewed Kelleher, I asked him in the book, they talk about Department of Homeland Security folks going to look at stuff that seemed to be crash retrieval related, and they got the door slammed in their face. So I asked Kelleher about that. He also said something about it, I think back in, I don't know if it's 2006 or 96, probably 2006, on Coast to Coast with Art Bell, talking about there's been whispers about, actually it was 2004, I think, 2 years after the alleged Eric Davis, Admiral Wilson meeting, which to me, it's not alleged, but Kelleher said there's been whispers of crash retrieval. So I asked him about that, and he said, well, Davis had already left, or I had already left NIDS, or Davis wasn't working for NIDS, something like that. And then he said, I have NDAs. I really can't talk about that. But the book speaks for itself. And that part of the book, basically, they were shut out of trying to get access to that stuff related to maybe crash retrievals. Here's some audio I can play. This is really, really basic.
Are you worried about UFOs?
One New York senator is, and she's trying to learn more about them as part of this year's National Defense Act. Kirsten Gillibrand has introduced an amendment to create the Anomaly Surveillance and Resolution Office. Its goal would be to use resources from the intelligence community to learn more about unidentified aerial phenomena. Gillibrand says she wants to learn more about the mysterious objects she studied while serving on the Senate's Armed Services Committee.
So remember, the Senate Armed Services Committee, that's one of the committees Eric Davis said he briefed. So there's an article I quote from earlier or later in my tweets, but that's in Rochester, New York station. So she's one of the senators for New York. So they covered that. I don't know if there's more to the TV story, but it cuts off there. And I went to school an hour from there in Rochester. I said, it's nice to see a few New Yorkers cover the story. Let's see. Yeah, Mike Turber. That's PJU's. So PJU's was on I think the Nimitz, and he was part of the Hawkeye group when he said that there were folks who came on after the Tic Tac incident and took his data tapes and confiscated them. He's really credible, and when he's tweeting, he has a lot of good information. He thinks Tic Tac is, for a while he was 50-50 and he was leaning towards it being our tech. Now he's like, I do not think it's our tech. And he's commenting to a guy, Mike Turber, who he says, I'm going one by one, going through Mike Turber's lies. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that Turber has said, some ridiculous things like he rode in a Tic Tac, but then he said he was just kidding. That's as much time as I want to spend on Turber. Yep. Have a good night, Pix. Not going to go much longer. Michael Strange, he does a show called Troubled Minds Radio. I've been on at least once. He might still be going now. In fact, we can, I don't know if we're allowed to listen in live. That's his show. So he is out of Vegas too. And this is Ray Hernandez, who put together with ions. I'm not sure if the Institute of Noetic Science, which was formed by Edgar Mitchell, I don't know if they were totally behind that, but anyway, I'll let you hear the audio.
Ray Hernandez had an encounter with non-human beings inside his home, and it made him a different person. He says, after speaking with former astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, an organization was created to seek out and question others around the world who reported their own close encounters or out-of-body experiences, and to find out how their lives were affected. Surprisingly, most of those who've experienced more than one encounter say it changed them for the better.
It was a total transformation of the personality profile of the individual. For example, people, like in my case, total atheists, they become spiritual. People that were religious, they become very spiritual. People that were materialistic, all of a sudden, money is not important. People with immense egos, all of a sudden, diminished egos. Loving and caring to your fellow human brethren.
Participants in the study are asked hundreds of questions in multiple surveys. The results have been compiled and studied by a team of scientists and academics, and the findings published in a massive book. You can check out the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute on MysteryWire.com. I'm Ron Futrell reporting.
So I haven't had much interaction with Ray, only on Facebook, but I don't think he's responded to any of my points. But one of the things he says, people had life-changing experiences, and Colin Kelleher discusses a little bit of that in my interview, saying, yes, we did have some positive cases. We don't know if was it intentional on whatever the intelligence they interacted with. Was it an intentional, effort on their part to make it positive, or was it just a a side effect of whatever experience they had. There's no way to tell, but at least Hernandez is doing data. And OSAP did data too, which I hope we get to see that one day. I mean, they did a lot of work in 2 years, and I want to see all of the data, not just what was in the book stories. I want to hear everything, but they have to take out all the names of people who agreed to speak without, they agreed to speak and did not want their names used. So all of that would have to come out. And Kelleher said they'd have to trust somebody to be detail oriented enough to get rid of that stuff and make sure they didn't make a mistake. Good night, John. Mozart, I just watched your conversation with George and Colm. I wonder what numerical index of credibility they assigned the Caleras case. And I do want to interview LA about that. And I'll say it again. There are people who think Caleras was human technology. I think Kit Green, I'm not sure if he still thinks that, but when I spoke to him 2 years ago, he was leaning heavily towards that being human tech. I don't know. Most of the people do not agree with him. Other people, maybe he has other people, his colleagues, that do agree with him. I have never talked to them. And let's see. And that's James. I almost said James Lukatsky. James Iandoli, who does engage in the phenomenon. CE5, really good. If you have any interest in CE5 and you're like, I don't like Stephen Greer, go to James. Nicest guy, does great work. And he was talking about my interview with Knapp and Kelleher, which I personally didn't think. There are other interviews I liked better than my interview. I mean, George and Colin Kelleher were great. And some of my questions I thought I got some good answers, but Whitley Strieber's interview I think was really good. And there was an interview done on the Paracast, which I am going to take notes on. I should have done it the first time I listened, but there's some new information I hadn't heard before about cattle mutilations and some other stuff. I think it's related to crash retrievals, and it was not good. I'll just summarize. Kelleher thinks that a lot of when they went over to physical papers to digital and they transferred, they lost a lot of stuff, and that stuff may never be recoverable, which is really, really disappointing if that happened. So here's the article on Senator Gillibrand saying, during a visit to Rochester Monday, the New York Democrat, Senator Gillibrand, said her interest in studying UFOs comes from her work on the Senate Armed Services Committee, after hearing of a number of sightings of mysterious objects in the sky by Naval and Air Force officers. Let me click on this so I can get to the next one. After hearing about a number of sightings of mysterious objects in the sky by Naval and Air Force officers, Gillibrand said it's time to figure out what and where these things are from. She said the aircraft have surprising capabilities, so she's asking the DoD to compile previous and future sightings with national security in mind. Quote, we've had a number of sightings by Navy pilots and Air Force pilots of things that cannot be explained. Aircraft that do things that we are unfamiliar with. If it is knowable, meaning it's Russian or Chinese aircraft, we need to know what it is, what the capabilities are, and how to defend against that. If it is unknowable, we also need to know about that. Well, listen, I don't think it's unknowable. I just think it's an unknown intelligence or adversary or whatever. I don't think anything is unknowable, especially if we have downed craft or donated craft, gifted craft. I think we could know at least if there are bodies, or if there are bodies, if we have bodies, we could at least know what some of the occupants look like. We can at least get that. Doesn't mean we know where they're from, though. Doesn't mean we know intentions. Now, the article concludes, if the Gillibrand Amendment is passed, the measure would add layers of oversight and public discourse on these sightings, creating an aerial and transmedium advisory committee. Experts from NASA, FAA, and various universities would serve on the committee. The senator also said she'd like to make it easier for military members who see these objects to come forward. Gillibrand said that some officers have faced retaliation for acknowledging these craft, which she said is inappropriate. That should never happen, continued Gillibrand. We need our service members to put forth data and info when they see it, especially if it's unusual. Now my question is, when will a member of the media say, Senator Gillibrand, we've heard folks, Christopher Mellon specifically, say that he was with Eric Davis on the Hill when he was briefing folks about crash retrievals. Can you confirm that you were briefed about crash retrievals or one of your staffers? How hard is it to get? I mean, it'd be the biggest question ever, even if you don't believe it as a reporter. We had Christopher Mellon on CNN talking about saying he was there with Eric Davis when Davis was given the briefings. How is there not one reporter in this country that hasn't asked that question? I mean, come on, do your job. If I had access, if I could get an interview with Gillibrand, I would do it. And I guess I should push and try. I don't think I'd have any luck, but I have to at least try. So that's a little frustrating how it's not that hard to follow the breadcrumbs. Hey, anybody in the mainstream media, send me a DM, send me an email, talk to me on the phone. I will at least give you the background. I could show you what Eric Davis has said. I could show you what Christopher Mellon has said, and you can ask Senator Gillibrand if she's been briefed on objects that may have crashed and we have tried to exploit them. So anyway, let's see, what else do we have left? I just want to find the audio for my first Twitter. This is going to be enough. I want to find the audio, which I retweeted. Oh, so Brandon Fugel on that tweet he put out earlier about what they were doing at the ranch with all their equipment, and there were 666 likes. 666 likes. Oh my God. I just had to freeze that, just grab that screen. And Brandon was getting attacked, and he said, I have worked in what conference, Gabby? Oh, conferences. I don't want to do conferences. It's not my thing. I like this. I don't have to be on camera. Put me in a conference with a big screen. Put me in a big black enclosed room where I don't have to see anybody. And I'll just read tweets like this. Yeah, I don't know if mainstream media is afraid or they just don't even bother with it. They probably don't even know that happened. They don't know that Christopher Mellon backed up Eric Davis's, when he was asked specifically by Michael Smerconish on CNN if the government had a craft or alien craft. I don't remember this exact wording. That was the lead in to Mellon. So Mellon wasn't just talking about, Davis briefing them about off-world vehicles and UFOs. So it was about specifically crash retrieval, the topic of crash retrievals. So Fugel says, I have worked very hard to be more transparent than anyone and have provided the most revealing and comprehensive record of the ranch. I don't understand where you're coming from. I challenge you to go back in time pre-2018 and compare that to now. There is no comparison. I'm not even going to read. It was basically attacking him of, you're not transparent. Basically, that's what they were saying. I think we're coming to the end. Oh, this was, all right, so we got two audios. John Greenwald, who we have battled in the past. Hopefully the audio is there.
How could this man come out, start talking?
So he's talking about Luis Elizondo.
How could this man come out, start talking openly, get all this publicity, and make these bombshell claims? And the Pentagon says, nope, none of that is true. Is the evidence not there because the Pentagon is involved in this big cover-up? Or is Elizondo embellishing what his role really was? Is he lying? Is he telling the absolute truth? The Pentagon doesn't have a great history with this topic. So how do we know who to believe?
The fact that, so I also did some follow-up audio on there. I mean, how do we know who to believe? It's possible he was saying that's what we were all thinking back then, but he doesn't think that now. But I've seen other work by John, and he was in the Showtime piece saying, similar, he had a similar sentiments, sharing similar sentiments in the Showtime piece. So I have no doubt that Luis Elizondo, I don't believe certain people in the Pentagon. It's as simple as that. I believe Lou. As I said in my audio, it doesn't mean I agree with Lou on everything. There are certain things I have disagreed with him really strongly on, but so what? You're going to disagree with people all the time. I think it's a waste of time. 4 years, it's been more than 4 years. Luis Elizondo was on that stage with Christopher Mellon and Tom DeLonge and Jim Semivan. That was October of 2017. So it's over 4 years, and we're still asking the question, did he embellish his role? Did he really run the Pentagon? Just real quick, OSAP, 2008, September, it starts, goes to December 2010. Somewhere in there, Luis Elizondo, he was he had some dealings with OSAP, helping them out. I'm not exactly sure exactly what he was doing, counter intel, making sure, other nations weren't getting access to our program, OSAP. But sometime at that point, during the 2008 to 2010 time period, or shortly thereafter, he moved into ATIP and ran whatever that was, whatever that program was. And the confusion is because OSAP, when they wrote a letter to Deputy Secretary of Defense William Lynn, Harry Reid wanted to take OSAP to a special access program. Number one, they wanted to get possible access to crash retrieval stuff, things like that. All other programs were UFO related. Also, they wanted to make sure they didn't have to fight for funding every year. If they were a special access program, that would not be a problem anymore, apparently. And they used in that letter, they came up with a nickname so people didn't find out about OSAP. They came up with a nickname and they called it ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. So that was a nickname. But later on, when Lou had his Pentagon program, small program, not like OSAP, which was pretty big, 50 people were working in the field. So Lou adopted the ATIP name. So when you hear, Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goff saying, well, Luis Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities for ATIP, is she talking about the nickname ATIP, which would be OSAP? Well, if that's the case, then she's right. But ATIP that we know that Lou ran, she's wrong. But she also said ATIP and OSAP didn't study UFOs, which I do not believe at all. I think she's either lying or she's uninformed and sharing bad information. So I don't understand why John is still questioning whether or not Lou did what he did, because he doesn't have a FOIA that tells him that. And he may never get that FOIA. There comes a time you have to use your judgment. And most of us, when we heard Lou from the beginning, we figured this was a good person for us. And him and Mellon have done so much work behind the scenes with Congress. So I don't have any doubt Lou did what he said he did. As far as funding, Lou said they had funding, but he doesn't want to talk about it. I want to know where the funding came from. I mean, it's my tax dollar money. I would like to know. I don't know why it's so secretive. So anyway, here's the press conference with John Kirby from the 29th. So that's yesterday, right? And the interview, the person asking the question is Travis Tritton from military.com. And it's about the AOI MSG.
Travis.
Thanks, John. I wanted to ask you about this new UAP office that was created by Deputy Secretary Hicks and announced last week. The Aerial Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. Was there any, it's a mouthful. Was there any coordination with lawmakers on Capitol Hill? They're proposing related legislation like Representative Gallego and Senator Gillibrand. And secondly, some former Pentagon officials who had worked on this issue, Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo, have said that this is an effort for the Pentagon to be less transparent on UAPs. And I was just wondering if you had any response to that.
On the first one, I can't speak to pending legislation. Obviously, I'd refer to those members, but we absolutely kept members of Congress informed as we fashioned this group together.
I don't know who pointed it out, but he said we kept, and I didn't figure this out. Somebody on Twitter said he said they kept Congress informed. So they were saying, well, in other words, they didn't work with Congress. They just informed them. They didn't sit down and say, hey, let's work on this together. They just said, this is what we're doing. So that was something, that was a nice catch by somebody. I don't know if it was Nick Pope. I think it was somebody else.
And announced it.
Let's go back a little.
As we fashioned this group together, and pending legislation, obviously I'd refer to those members, but we absolutely kept members of Congress informed as we fashioned this group together and announced it. And it is, to your second question, it is really designed to help us better coordinate the reporting processes, the actual reports themselves, and the analysis of those reports, so that rather than getting them sort of piecemeal and ad hoc as we've been getting them from the services. This is a way to coordinate the input so that we can. There's a common set of parameters for how to report them and to analyze them, and then to assess what we've got. And not all reports are going to manifest themselves in something that we consider a national security threat. So this is a chance for us to be a much more organized in the way we process these reports. And as we will certainly continue to be as transparent as we can about these phenomena and the impact that they may or may not be having on our ability to operate.
Is there any specific commitment to release some data or information on these to the public at some point? Something beyond a briefing to Congress or closed door?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a specific report to announce today that, on any kind of a frequent basis that we would do, but I can assure you that our intention is to be as transparent about this phenomena as we can. Again, Travis, understanding that there'll be national security considerations that we have to keep in mind, but we'll be as transparent as we can, but not, I don't want to leave you with the impression that there'll be sort of a regular drumbeat of some kind of report that gets posted on the website, every couple months.
Yeah, I don't want to give you that impression. Why would we put a report on a website every couple of months? It's not like your taxpayer dollars is paying for this. It's national security. Give me a break. If it's not an adversary, and if it's something totally unknown, and we know there are downed craft and there's beings inside, that's not national security. It could be considered, they can make the argument, well, these things are here to attack us, or they could say, well, we don't want to panic the entire planet, so that's national security. But listen, even Lewis said it when he was asked theoretically, hypothetically, if we had a craft and bodies, he did not think that should stay classified. That information needs to get out. So that's that. He's a Pentagon spokesperson, so I'm not gonna hold too much against him. He's just doing what he's told, but that's nonsense. I'm sorry. There should be a plan for public presentation of data. I would think most of it is not national security as we define national security related to foreign adversaries. I'll just go through a couple of tweets. Somebody's, Board Cat saying, and I can't get, there we go. I'm sorry, I can't trust Elizondo or Mellon. I bet they are just after budget approvals. You simply can't trust politicians to be scientific. There's always an agenda. Well, they're not politicians, number one. Number two, the military doesn't need this for the budget. First of all, this is such a small thing. Whatever budget's going to be approved for this, it's nothing compared to the military budget. This is not a good way to get a military budget unless you want to push the threat angle really hard, which they're not doing. They've been accused of that. Listen to Colm Kelleher in my interview. He's like, UFOs sometimes can be dangerous and bad for the health of a human being, but we did not see any evidence that they're purposely, trying to hurt us. Like there's not a threat. If you're trying to push for money, all of these people should be pushing the threat angle, and they're just not doing it, which I've actually even argued the opposite. I'm like, if we really don't know what we're dealing with, so it could be a threat. And Lou, it was during a Clubhouse event. He was like, well, not necessarily. So he was actually pushing the other side. And PJ was like, I am exactly right about Lou. And John, I mean, yeah, it's just my opinions. So thanks for the comments, everybody, even the ones that I don't mind opposing comments. It's just, we all have opinions. The problem I have is when people try to tell me they know what the phenomenon represents. That's the main thing. Or they know 100%. Lou is a disinfo agent. That was being said way back when. We don't have to trust him. We can just hear him and analyze his information. And also, yeah, and we'll see what Congress does, It's been Mellon and Elizondo pushing for this. So let's see what this office, the Gillibrand amendment does if it gets passed, Rubio, Gillibrand. It's nice to have, bipartisan people working together from both sides. How often do we have? I mean, it happens, obviously, but nowadays we're so fractured and so opposed to both sides. So anyway, that is my first Twitter summary. Yeah, sorry, Board Cat. Business reality shows, that's separate. You know, what Brandon is doing is not the same to what's going on with OSAP. They had $22 million over 2 years and they hired 50 people. That's not a lot of money. I mean, the DIRDs, the Defense Intelligence Research Documents, I think they were 15,000 each. I think it was 537,000 for 38 papers that were written, which were, according to Putoff and Kelleher, they were really popular with people who had access to it. A lot of people were able to access those papers. So anyway, no, I understand you're a critic of them, not the phenomena, but nothing they've said is I have no problem with anything they've said. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I have had problems with both Lou and Mellon, but nothing major. Usually more details. One of the big things I had is when Lou was on Unidentified and they were really making it look like abductions were sleep paralysis, which, you know, there are abductions, whatever they are, they've happened during the day when people are wide awake. So that was annoying. And they left out information that Robert Hastings had collected, which is on his website, which I wish I could link to right now. It's really good. When you read it, you're like, this is not sleep paralysis, whatever's going on with these folks. So, and some of them cannot go under hypnosis because they have a national, you know, non-disclosure or security clearance. So it says they cannot undergo this hypnosis. So you can't make the argument, well, their memories were recovered during hypnosis. Nope, sorry, not for these folks. How often do I plan? Thanks, David. And I don't praise my work. It's very rare for me to praise my work. But I think my Twitter is pretty good. I think I'm pretty good with Twitter, finding interesting stuff. Since I have a good memory of stuff I've not uncovered, but, you know, come across since 96 when I got into this. I still remember some of that stuff. So I want to keep doing this. And PJ Mike wants to know how often. If I only do an hour, I mean, I could try to do it every other day. I mean, it'd be great to do it every day, but I also I know as a freelancer, I have work coming up towards the end of the month. And Adele just signed a deal at Caesar's Palace from like January to March, I think. It's a really long run for her residency. I'm not an Adele fan. It's not my kind of music, but if I get booked for that, I think it's 2 days a week, which would be perfect. 5 days this, 2 days that. So I will try to do this every couple of days. If I get into a rhythm and a pattern, I could try to do it every night, but not this late. I will not do it this late. This is not a good idea to do it this late. So anyway, all right, I'm going to cut it off. Thanks for the comments, all the comments. And like I said, if people like this, I know some of you guys are supporters on Patreon. If you want to, and I'll say this because some people don't know me. I don't do this for money, but if I could make enough money to pay my bills, I could do it full time. Like right now, I'm doing it as much as I can until the end. This weekend, I'm working a job 2 days, and then at the end of the month. But if I went back to my full time freelance work, I would not be able to do this. You're working 12-hour days. You just can't do it. So I would just disappear. And if people don't care, that's fine. If people want it, and they do want it, and they want me to keep doing this as much as I can, I'll still have to work a little bit, you know, to pay the bills. But there's my blog, and that's my Twitter. And let me put back to the top of my Twitter. That is my Twitter. And like I said, PayPal, and I need it. See, I can't turn this into audio. I would like to turn these into audio, the interviews, but you need visuals, I think. Well, of course, there's audio. That's great to have it's great to be able to put audio from Twitter, which is really cool. Venmo, an hour. So we did an hour. So an hour is pretty good. And I don't mind. It's actually, we can do Twitter/Q&A, which is great because I like Q&A. That's my favorite thing to do. I'm waiting for somebody who I've battled on Twitter to come on here, but that hasn't happened yet. It's a different thing when you're debating somebody on social media versus them being right in front of you, whether it's video or audio, or even in the chat. Like Michael Huntington, we'd go at it on Twitter, but when he's in the chat, he would ask questions. I'm like, okay, I don't agree with your question, the answer, but let's take it on. Yeah, Twitter audio was good, David. So anyway, I'm going to cut it off. I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow. I don't work until Friday and Saturday, a boxing event. So I could do one more. Yeah, I could do one more tomorrow, and then that's it until Sunday. All right. Have a great night, guys. Talk to you soon.